The following is a presentation of Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, the viewer's guide to genre television.
Hello and welcome to the Small Council Matters podcast. I am Wendy Hembrock and our council is gathered and in session. First order of business, let's go around the table and introduce yourselves, please, Maesters.
This is Jesse Jackson from Dallas, Texas. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter, X, and I am the Maestress of Happiness, Sunshine, all things Springsteen. I have my little ball in place, ready to discuss a great episode.
This is Christine Peruski, your Mistress of Correction, and I was mistaken. I am surprised.
And this is Shannon from out in the Pacific Northwest, and I think I might like to keep chickens.
I am Wendy, the Maester of Links and Google Docs and calling us to order. I am feeling like this was a season finale episode that we just watched. Today we're going to be discussing episode 302 of House of the Dragon, Queen's Landing. Just a reminder before we get talking about stuff, we'd love to hear from you. We love your ravens and your comments and voicemails. You can join our Game of Thrones channel on our main Discord. You can contact us through Twitter or Blue Sky. We are SCM_pod on both of those. You can also follow the link in the show notes. We have a link you can follow to leave us a voice message, and you can call us at 706-927-8478 and leave us a message. We would love to hear from you. We did get an email that we'll talk about in the listener feedback section in a minute. But before we do that, just a couple of news links to share with folks related to the bonus content that HBO puts up. And they were speedy this week. We got the inside the episode, of course, immediately after it aired on Sunday. But we also got the House That Dragons Built, and that was about 22 minutes deep diving into this episode. It was, I thought, very well worth the time. And we also have a link to next episode preview of what's to come. So first, any thoughts on any of that stuff?
HBO does a great job of this. Not only the little 3 to 4 minute right afterwards, but the behind the scene. A lot stood out, but I think the thing that charmed me the most is Harry talking about when you lay down that long and with your eyes closed, you are going to fall asleep and you can't. And so how do you wake up when you can't open your eyes? And he says that I'm hearing myself snore. Just, you can tell how charmed they were, the cast was by him and the crew. And I could see that in his personality. And I also thought it was very touching, by tradition, when you wrap for a series, it's announced. And the guy who played Otto, right, everyone's just all applauding him and Matt Smith's like, okay, we're going to have a beer later. And it showing the special effects was interesting, but seeing the personalities of all the players involved, always, I think, interesting.
Yeah, I actually got a chance to watch this week. And the Harry parts were the ones that stuck out to me the most. I mean, we got to see that they did use him as the dead body and they didn't just make a body double, which is something that we saw a lot of heads made in this inside the episode, which looked really real. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they would make like a whole body instead of making the actor go through that. But he did. That was him the whole time, even draped over the saddle, which was very uncomfortable. And the makeup job they had to do on him because he had, he was dead and you lose your color. Emma Darcy told him that he looked like Edward Scissorhands, and I could see it. It's the moment he said it, I was like, yes, you do. So it's definitely very charming, and if you have a chance, give it a look.
Yeah, the inside the episode and all that was great, but the main meat is in the house the dragons built. The Harry stuff was very cute. I think it was a separate interview I saw with Emma Darcy, and they were saying that when she was having some of her reaction to when they brought his body in, that was just an acting tour de force from her. But just instinctually, she wanted to kind of beat on the body and then realized, oh God, that's Harry. And he's like awake, he's not actually dead and I can't hit it like I wanted to. So that was kind of funny about the stories of him like falling asleep and wondering what to do. And the extras and the heads, that was great. They always love showing burning people, which I guess for the show is accurate. And amazingly, how safely they do it with people running in the second they call cut and hosing them down. And then the other thing that stood out was they all talked about how good Ewan Eamon's portrayer is at the fighting stuff. And he trains and takes and memorizes it. And I think in one of our previous shows, there was a Today segment with Matt Smith, and he said that stuff is really, really hard for him. So the way he works it in his mind is he has to think of it like a dance and memorize certain steps, or else he'll wind up tripping over his sword or doing whatever. So you see two very different and distinct approaches to doing the sword fighting, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, and they also stylistically look very different when they do it. I love the comments that they made about, I think his name's Ewan, the actor that plays Aemon, his actual armor, because his armor was cool. I mean, it did look like scales, but it almost was like snake-like or insect-like, where it slithered as he moved. It had this like reptilian aspect to it that I thought was very much fit how he moved when he was hacking his way through Harrenhal. The Harry stuff for the actor who played Jace was fantastic, and it was so cute when they showed him all the way, I guess, back in season 1. It's like, wow, he really was a little kid when they started with all this stuff. He was very cute. So yeah, that was all cool stuff. I really do appreciate what HBO does for us with the bonus content. So now let's kind of dive into the meat of things and talk a little bit. We got some feedback from, as I mentioned, our Maester in the Wild, Pat Sponigal, Pat in Maryland. I'm not going to read the whole email. I'm going to highlight some comments that he made, though. One, he was a little confused in the opening scene with who were the 3 dragons. Eventually figured out it was our dragon seeds, but and a shout out to Alice in her interventions in helping to get them out of the Vale and also keep Aemond there. The other thing was he commented about maybe needing to defend the dragon seeds a little bit. They're new. Daemon could have flown over and checked on them. He was nearby from the battle. Daemon's been pretty hard on those guys, so I'm going to be curious to hear what you think about that. And also, did Daemon make a big mistake being so dismissive of Alice Rivers and her request to just give her Harrenhal? He also was a little bit confused about or wondering why Alicent was fleeing the city with Helena and Jaehaera, because she was upholding her deal as best she could. However, she didn't have Aegon there. Aemond was supposed to be gone to Harrenhal. He was speculating that maybe Alicent, as she saw things starting to fall apart, wasn't sure who she could trust amongst the Kingsguard and the City Watch. Her own sworn protector, Sir Rickard, probably couldn't be trusted, probably was the one that sold her out to Jasper. So maybe that's why she was just trying to bail. The other thing he noted was just before, when Alicent is making the rounds of petitioning the City Watch to just let the door stay open and, not try to shoot down the dragons at all with the scorpion. There's one person who he has his helmet off, so we can really recognize his face. And Pat was thinking, was he important? Will we see him again? And also, he feels like Rhaena named the wild dragon Sheepstealer, and Baela maybe heard her call the dragon Sheepstealer when she was yelling at him over and over. But he kind of wishes that Baela hadn't mentioned the name, so we didn't have to figure out what's going on with how anyone knows Sheepstealer's name or how it was given to him. So, thoughts on any of our Maester's comments?
Thank you, Pat. It doesn't feel like the small council without feedback from you. So thank you. That brings me happiness to read your thoughts, and please keep them coming. Yes, Damon has no time for Huey, Dewey, and he was asking about Louis as well. That was a wonderful scene. I do love how he cannot put up with these fools. We had a great discussion about Sheepstealer and the name. I think that is, we're kind of have to do some hand waves or some, mind filling in to get that canon in there. And we will have to see that I did not catch the soldier kind of having that moment. So it's going to be interesting. Is that just they were a director's choice to kind of put it dramatic, or is that foreshadowing?
Yes, Pat, thank you for your feedback. The first of the season, at least the first email, big meaty email. It's interesting that you were confused by the dragons in the opening. I wasn't, because the scene with the dragon scenes from the first episode was my favorite. And I knew they were flying back to join the battle. But looking back on this opener, I can see where someone less focused on that storyline could get thrown. Because it's really hard to tell which dragon is which, especially ones you haven't spent that much time with. So, wait, why are all these dragons here? We saw one drown. And one of them still locked back at the castle, at least the writer is. So, yeah, it's a little weak there, maybe. The Sheepstealer thing, I think we did discuss it a lot last episode and a little bit before we started recording. Regardless of why the dragons name that, and if it's something that everybody on Dragonstone knows, it's not something they have established in the show. And I think that's a lost thread that I hope they clear up before the season is over, because it's starting to confuse everybody. It's like, why does everybody know this dragon's name? Pat also mentioned that Baela knew it was Rhaena. And Pat, I believe you are mistaken about that. She recognized the dragon, according to what Rhaenyra said, but she never spotted who the rider was. She tried to attack Sheepstealer, but had to evade and then was chased. And not at one point did she recognize the rider or get a good look at the rider. Rhaena recognized Baela because she said, "That's my sister." And she was desperately trying to stop the dragon, but couldn't. Jace was the only one who saw it was Rhaena. He said Rhaena and pulled away. And, well, he's not talking, so I don't think anybody else knows. I do agree. I think Alicent was fleeing the city because the deal for her was to hand Aegon over her execution, and he wasn't there. Someone needed to be made an example of, and she would be the best person. But she wasn't there either, so they went for Otto instead. She is so lucky she came in just a few minutes later, or else that might have been her head on the floor. And I'm glad it isn't, because, you know, I think we need her around. I think it's clear that she's going to be held at that castle, and I think she's going to be speaking with Rhaenyra a lot throughout the season. So I'm glad she still has her head to do that with. And thank you again for the feedback.
Pat, good to hear from you as always. Thanks for the Raven you sent in. So just quickly on some of those points, I was also confused by the 3 dragons at the beginning, because they were tiny and you saw them, and I'm like, so who did they get? And then it quickly dawns on you what happens when they show some close-up. So that completely makes sense. You know, I know, Pat, you like to play devil's advocate with a lot of things, and on the dragon seeds, I'll be there kind of 67% with you. For 2 of them, I think Hugh is respectful and behaves in the way he should, and the same with Adam. But Ulf, no, man. Ulf is an a-hole. Daemon can smack him around all day long, and I'll be there cheering with popcorn. So I think we're kind of close to agreement on that. I think we can kind of figure our way into why Alicent was escaping. I think the main crux of it was once she was attacked in her chambers, she knows that the City Watch guy she talked to sold her out. So she thinks maybe, the deal is not going to work out like she thinks, or her own people are going to turn over if it doesn't, and she doesn't have the protection of the blacks. So I kind of get why she was leaving there. And we all talked about Sheep Stealer. I talked about that a lot last week. I'm going to kind of go with what the book said, even though it wasn't explicit on the show, that it was around Dragonstone. It heard everybody call it that, and it kind of knew what its name was. And then therefore, Rhaena would know what that is as well and what to call it. And it kind of recognizes that. Because if they try to establish that Rhaena is the one who gave it that name just in the Vale when she tamed it for the first time, I don't think that's quite as clean or makes as much sense. But anyway, great to hear from you, Pat. Thanks for your feedback, and we hope to hear from you again soon.
Yeah, Shannon, I'm wondering if, I think it was back in, I don't know if it was season 1 or season 2. I think it was season 2, when Daemon is talking about, accumulating the dragons. Maybe he named it back then when he kind of went through the inventory. I'd be curious to go back and check. Or if he just said there's 3 wild dragons or something. Because there's
Wendy is signing homework.
2 more, there's 2 more left back in Dragonstone, is my understanding. I like what you're putting down about, Daemon should not have, been so flirty and cavalier with Alice Rivers. She warned him. She told him, you'll die in this place. Back when he was in Harrenhal, under her spell. And, that moment was very powerful for me in terms of there was many moments in this episode where Daemon was, pretty arrogant, based on the victory, maybe, drunk on the spoils of war aspect. The other is Ulf is actually his stepbrother. So Ulf might have even more inflated view of himself because he knows that that's his stepbrother, versus Hugh knows who his mother is, and she's not as elevated maybe in the hierarchy, or maybe Ulf's just that guy who wants to bond. But he definitely also wants things that he doesn't deserve. I guess Hugh and Adam seem to understand that you have to pay your dues to get your knight, your horse, maybe your castle down the road. But it was great to hear from you. Hopefully we will hear from you again. And if folks aren't aware, Pat writes about, just a reminder, Pat writes about Game of Thrones and has a cool feed on Blue Sky. I don't know if he's on Twitter still as well, but check it out. So let's get into the episode a little more. We've already started, but let's get into some first round of quick reviews and thoughts. And we're going to start with Jesse.
So this did feel like a season finale, and there was speculation, right, that if they could have done it anyway, these 2 episodes would have ended season 2. And I could see that. I thought this was a really great follow-up to another, last week was a solid episode, a really good episode. This one almost as good, but with a really great ending. So I'm going to give this, let's call it 9 out of 10, Raising Chickens.
Well, this is a great season finale. I mean, this season flew by quick, guys, so we're just gonna wrap it up here. No. This was another excellent episode. An emotional roller coaster resulting in some Blair Witch snot shots. They managed to squeeze a lot of bits into this episode again, even a musical number, which I very much appreciated. But yeah, there's a couple of uncomfortable moments for some of us here. So I am giving this 9 out of 10 birdcage knockouts.
Yeah, there were a couple of tiny missteps in this episode, but for the most part, I agree with what Christine said. A great season finale. I mean, last week we talked about how episode 1 was more like a penultimate episode, and this seemed like a finale, and if indeed we had 10 episodes in the second season like we had in the first season, that's where we would be. So I think this episode really delivered. There was great dragon action, some great fighting action, just some Emmy-worthy acting, just terrific plot twists, almost everything you could ask for in a House of the Dragon episode. I was really impressed with it. Also, I noticed a couple little things they did to the opening credits. We had Jace, and we had a stitching of Corlys fighting on the boat. And then before you get, when the tapestry kind of rolls, before it gets to the Targaryen sigil, we had waves like water, like reflecting the Battle of the Gullet. It was all blue before it got to that. So that was an interesting little addition to it. So I give this one a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, this was the fantastic finale. I was joking earlier, and it also is, the path to the throne is fire and blood, and we got it all over the place in this episode. The acting, as you pointed out, was fantastic, especially by Emma Darcy. But they packed a lot into the story. There was character moments in the story. There was plot advanced. There was no draggy parts to it at all. And there was a ton of dragons. And the thing I really liked was we had a little bit different perspective of, it was almost like we were not flying on the dragon, but flying next to the dragon. And we got a lot more of the look and feel of the dragon versus looking at the rider a lot of the time, which I really appreciated. And the burning effects all over the place in the gullet in the beginning when Aemon goes to Harrenhal, and when we have the flight to King's Landing for the Queen to land. Those were all just stellar. I mean, those are all things that people are going to remember across this series. I am giving it 9.7 out of 10 Wax by Dark Sister. So now let's talk about the details and the highlights, and I think we are going to have a low light or two maybe to discuss at the end. So let's get started, Jesse, with the highlights.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose, and I'm going to be greedy and go right to the end. The ascension to the throne, right? This brought back thoughts of Game of Thrones, where Daenerys came in, took over the throne. So we have Rhaenyra showing up. And someone else is going to talk about all of that journey, but they're in the throne room and you could see she's nervous. Like, and like, I can't, I've got to finish the fight before I take that throne. And when you get the city guard showing up and, Daemon going, well met, and the throwback to he used to be their commander. He is the one who was kind of, instrumental in setting this up. And we go and, she has to, Daemon is pushing her. You need to kill Otto. It has to be you. This is when you become queen. And it's reminded she was never trained. Another fault that her father did is he did not have her working and learning how to be a ruler. So it's awkward. Otto is like, can you just have Daemon do it? Like, I know I'm going to die anyway. And that ticked her off. And I like that they showed her it wasn't clean till the second shot. And then her walking in the blood and that bloody footsteps going to the throne. And I thought of, in the first season, they talked about that this throne is uncomfortable and that her father got sick sitting on it because of the different points and how it didn't work with him well. And that showing that, and then Alicent seeing that the deal she made, she did not include her father in this, and all of a sudden now then she comes and there's her dad's head on the floor. This is going to be problems between them. This did feel like a season finale, right? This is, you've wrapped up first part of the story, but you've left us so much other things to think about. And it was just so dramatically, so well done. I was kind of at the end. And so, like I said, I'm being greedy. I'm going right to the climax, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think about it. I just thought it was a perfect way to end an episode, and really almost a perfect way to end the season, even though we're now, next week will be season 2.5, maybe.
So I titled this scene, Westeros has its own controversial reflecting pool. Because they gave us that wonderful shot of her climbing the steps in the reflection in the blood from Otto's decapitation. And I'm like, hey, look, it's the reflecting pool. And I can actually see the reflection of the monument right there. But this scene is really setting the tone for what we're getting this season. This rule will not be comfortable. Rhaenyra may question whether she really wants to rule, but at the same time have to fight tooth and nail to keep the throne. We see that with her having to execute Otto. I mean, Daemon could do it. Honestly, I think it would be understood. Viserys never did the executions, but maybe he thinks it's necessary for perception because she's a woman, and that's the main point of contention in this whole battle for the throne, like why people think she can't rule because she's a woman. So now she's got to overcorrect and do things that the king wouldn't normally do just to prove that she's the right person. Or maybe this was just Daemon being supportive, and he doesn't really know where the line is on that. Like, okay, that's over supporting. Like, that's overstating that she can do whatever she wants. Maybe she doesn't need to do this. And what I really focused on a lot during this was Rhaenyra's posture, Emma Darcy's posture. It looked like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. I mean, Jace just died. I don't think a day has passed. Okay, maybe a day, because she had gotten into her bedclothes. But it's raw. It's still there. This just happened, and now she's got to move. She's got to get in there and do this while everything's lined up. She has no choice. So she's just red-eyed and bawling through the whole thing. This is where that snot came in. I didn't need that. I mean, wipe it. You've got sleeves. Wipe it off. But it's just, I have to imagine shooting this entire episode for her was like exhausting, because the only way you get that kind of emotion, like really connect with the audience like that, is to really feel it, to make yourself feel it. And they have to do several takes at every different camera angle, several takes. They probably shot this end scene over the course of 2 days. She had to be that raw and emotional for 2 days straight. And kudos. Like, I was looking at Emmy nominations and wins for this show, and there's just a couple. There was like a couple of wins for like makeup or effects or something like that. And like there's some nominations from other awards for Best Actress. And I'm like, guys, give it to her. Like, look at these scenes. This episode in particular, this has got to win her an Emmy. She deserves it. I mean, I was on an emotional roller coaster, and I'm just sitting on a couch. So, loved this scene. Absolutely loved this scene.
Yeah, this everything you guys said is completely true. The portrayal by Emma Darcy, fantastic. What you talked about with Rhaenyra's posture, holding the sword right there, that just staggering. And I want to give a shout out to Clara Kilner, the director of this episode, because Wendy, you noted like we got some different looks at dragons and dragon riding in this. The shots of like Vhagar circling Harrenhal, of dragons landing at King's Landing, the different shots of the Queen's Landing, as it were, at the end, the scene we're talking about. And then that blood scene. Oh my God, that was terrific. Not only does it hold together emotionally and within the context of the story, it's not a flashy shot to be a flashy shot, but it's like this whole story is soaked in blood, and ascending to the throne requires wading through blood, to get there. Just superbly executed. And, and I think Daemon does seem like a little bit of a supportive, changed man this season, since he came back from Harrenhal and he swore his fealty to her when she came to visit him at Harrenhal. So I think he is being supportive there. And I saw some people talking about, Ned Stark famously said, the man that passes the sentence must swing the sword. But it was clear that was a northern custom. And he even pointed that out. Like Joffrey had Ilyn Payne, speaking of Ned Stark, and then the northern, we saw something similar with the Theon, when he tried to take ahead and botched it. But that was also being under the influence of that like northern custom. But I think, Daemon could have done it. But I think because of the in-depth misogyny that reigns in King's Landing at this time, and with a queen taking the throne versus a king, like nobody would have thought anything if it had been, a son, and the son had asked Daemon to cut off Otto's head, that it would have been no big deal. But I think Daemon understands that for optics and to overcome that ingrained misogyny, that she had to be the one to do it, albeit with no training. At least he gave her Dark Sister, which has a sharp Valyrian steel blade, versus whatever else she was trying to use, which I think she actually carried Jace's sword in there, which was not a Valyrian steel sword. So anyway, that first miss and the thunk it made me cringe, but thank God she got it on the second one. Yeah, and the emotional aspect of her full body acting and face, and the way the scene with Daemon and everybody played out, just a tremendous scene. And goodbye, Otto. Thanks for all the laughs.
Yeah, the the irony, right? So Otto was the one who made Daemon the head of the City Watch to keep him out of the small council and give him something to do. And, Daemon did a good job, and he earned the loyalty of Luther Largent. But even more so, that was why Rhaenyra needed to be the one to swing the sword, because people could have perceived that, well, the City Watch is loyal to Daemon. Are they really loyal to Rhaenyra too? They said they were, but, you could easily put a little gap in there. The other thing that I totally agree about Daemon is, he's on the mission. He's totally on board with his role is to support her very much in the way he wanted to support his brother, but was never allowed to, because in his point of view, what his contribution, what he brought to the table was discounted for, the other people who were, political. And this is Daemon's definitely his sweet spot, right? War, strategy, the whole, Kill Bill slicing through to get to the throne room. And when he's like, you have to do this right now in front of all these people. And, he was very supportive in my observation at that point. But also we got some foreboding here, right? Because Dark Sister was Visenya's sword, and Visenya was brutal. She was the mother of Maegor the Cruel, and the small folk turned against her. So we'll see what happens, how things work out. And I loved Emma Darcy, physical transformation through the scene as she's, she's distraught, overwhelmed, kills Otto, on the second blow, and then is walking through his blood. And it really was like glue holding her steps as she's trying to walk towards the throne. And then she doesn't like sit back and lean into it. Like she's just perched on the edge. She's barely seated onto the throne. And then Alicent comes in to see, Otto is beheaded. So it was just amazing. I loved the reflected blood element. When Daemon goes down to the Black Cells to find Otto, I loved how they framed everything about that. And he's laughing when he learns that Otto is his gift, because basically Otto really was responsible for usurping Rhaenyra, much more so than Aegon. He was behind the plot to begin with. So to me, it is very fitting that he's the one that got beheaded. Who knows what will have to be done with Aegon as a challenger, but I was very satisfied with that whole aspect of how she ascended to the throne. So great choice, Jesse. Okay, well, that's a big powerhouse to start with. Christine, what do you want to talk about next as a highlight?
I'm going in a totally different direction. We are going down the rabbit hole with Alice, where she meets Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. I will leave the decision of which one is which to everyone else. So, Alice and Daemon talk before he leaves for Dragonstone. We finally get the motivation for everything she did last season. She wants Harrenhal. She makes a good argument for why she should have it. I particularly liked the part where she provided an army of 40,000 men. It seems weighty to me. But Daemon is stuck in the mindset of how things are done. She's a bastard and a woman, no title, no husband. And really, it's only Daemon's word to say that she did anything at all. Yes, he does see the value she provided, but he can't see past the traditional rewards. This is Daemon's mistake. And she lays it on thick too with the whole I ask for food and you give me rubies. And no matter how much they're worth, they will never satisfy my hunger. He doesn't get it. And before he leaves, she reminds him of the threat. Don't come back here. Remember what I said. And for anybody who doesn't remember, she said, I think it was the first words she actually said to him, you will die here. And then we go through the looking glass and see a repeat of Daemon's arrival at Harrenhal, performed this time by Aemond. It goes differently. Honestly, I put a little blame on Sir Simon here. What was he doing? Just walking up to Aemond and putting his hands on him? I mean, who do you think this is? I know he looks a lot like Daemon. He reminds you a lot of Daemon, but you don't have that rapport with this guy. And Aemond, what was that? You just let some untrained boy get such an easy opening? You're slipping. It's just all sorts of silly mistakes happening in this room. But the real focus of the scene is the end. Aemond lies bleeding out in front of Alis. And she could just do nothing. Let him die there. And, that might even end the war, honestly, because, without Aemond, there's no Vhagar, which is like the big powerhouse that the Greens have. That's really what the Greens have going for them, not much else. But she clearly wasn't getting what she wanted from Daemon. And here's another likely candidate falling at her feet. And all I really want to see at the end of this season is Daemon realizing his folly, because he screwed up. He screwed up right here. She could have very easily killed their big opponent by doing nothing. But she might get what she wants if she helps this guy. Things are going to get interesting here.
So how can Daemon recognize the error of his folly when he doesn't have a helpful witch to send him on an acid trip? Because that's what happened
there. He's done that. He should know better by now.
Yep.
I think it'll probably take a few repeat lessons to learn. I love that you brought up the contrast of the way that, because they've often been compared, Aemond and Daemon in looks and appearance and ambitions and characterizations and things like that. And I love the compare and contrast between the ways that they both went into Harrenhal. Daemon landed, came in, I think he bonked one guard on the head, came in, found Simon Strong eating dinner, and it was, but Aemond killed a ton of people on the way in. Just, balletically, Vhagar torching people. We got our stunt doubles extra pay for fire hazards in abundance during that, and it looked great. The scenes of Vhagar circling in the mist, landing, and that whole entrance in. Ewan Mitchell killed it on the fight scenes and whatever. So I think he was just, you could see how they staged it, that he didn't think this kid was any threat really until he planted a knife in his back. So I buy that as to, why would such an impressive fighter be caught by, one of these strong boys that, looked like he could barely even hold a knife to butter bread with. But anyway,
I think that was the knife he buttered his bread with.
It may have been. And it took him by surprise. And then he's like, I don't know what to do. He gets in one of those rare situations where he's helpless. And Alis, for somebody with a witch, sure seems to have good fortune. Like you said, Christine, the opportunity with Daemon went away, which again, I don't blame Daemon for that, because Harrenhal has been disputed and coveted because of its location and because it's, other than dragons, nothing has ever penetrated Harrenhal, right? And it was really only the one, Balerion, the Black Dread, that really took it over completely when it was, in full operation. So, yeah, we're just the Queen, no matter how helpful you were, and even if Daemon said, I wouldn't have the 40,000 Rivermen or whatever without Alis, it ain't going to happen. So I don't think he was cruel about it. I think he was just matter of fact and but I could talk to her. We could see about other things. He even says that, but it's not what she wants. And that's why she just goes ice cold to him there at the end. but then all that comes and she's like, well, one opportunity leaves, another presents itself laying right at my feet right now. So I thought that was a great scene. Again, terrifically shot by the director and brilliantly acted by those two.
Yeah, this is a great choice. The thing I loved was the entrance to that scene, because we're watching Caraxes drink out of the pond, and I was like, should you be drinking that water? Because this is the place with the weird trees and stuff. So that was my first thought. But I also loved how they're just watching him do that as the setup for this whole conversation. And, he's a little bit still drunk on victory, but he's also just gotten this terrible news about Jace, and now I've got to go take King's Landing. So he might be underestimating her importance, even though she reminds him, you got these Rivermen because of me. He is operating in the standard mode of, well, you're nobody, you're a midwife. And I can't even understand what you actually did for me, because it was like, was it the tea? Was it the weird bedroom? Was it touching the weirwood tree? What was it, that transformed him? So, but I thought that the actors played, they have a connection, and there's still a warmth there, because even when she said, and she was super angry, she told him, don't come back here as a favor to him, even though she was super angry about it. So I'm going to be wondering if she had visions of Aemon coming as, plan B as part of this too. She also made a comment about her very long life, which makes me think that, she's been around a lot longer, like Melisandre, years longer. Not that she's a red witch, but just that, she's using magic in a similar way to be long lived. And then when, I again loved how they filmed it. Aemon is crawling on the floor and she's towering over him as he completely drops at her feet. And she's like, huh. And she walks into the room where, Sir Simon and the two sons were having dinner. I love the parallelism, of the entrance, and that, the Vagar fly around, takes out the battalion that Daemon had left behind in the valley, takes out a couple more people, wipes out one whole column of Harrenhal when it lands. And, I just loved how they directed all that. It was very, these feel like real animals to me doing their stuff. And, it felt very much like he and Aemon were sort of in simpatico of, we're just going to walk in and kill everything in sight. And then the contrast of Daemon walks into that dinner and sits down, and he's thinking about eating. He's worried about getting poisoned, but ultimately he's sort of charmed by Sir Simon, and, he's like, dude, we're not, we're happy you're here. And then Sir Simon does overplay his hand, right? By actually laying hands on Aemon. That was a big mistake. He should not have done that. If he had knelt, it might have gone differently. He might not have, killed him, but he was very disappointed that Daemon wasn't there.
He also failed to offer him dinner.
That too.
Just saying.
that could be. We did get good guest treatment, and we know that's important in Game of Thrones. So that was a great choice. I love that choice.
Yeah.
Go, Jesse.
Yes, a great choice. One of the things you guys didn't mention, which is a small thing, but Aemon, that long ladder his dragon is so big that he, it actually has to have this, long, long way, almost like he's climbing up a sail. I thought I'm really glad you brought up the kind of push me, pull me, right? That they're mirror images of each other. I wonder, is there going to be massive death in every episode this season? I, of course, haven't read the book, so I really thought, I said, man, are they killing Aemon? Like, why is this? Are we losing two major players on the board this episode? But then when Alice is there, I went, oh, okay, boy, Daemon, you've set her up where a spurned friend, and now then she's gonna find another way. The other thing I thought was interesting, remember, is Jace has already promised Harrenhal to somebody else, right? That was
the twins.
Because he went, he actually he was a pretty good diplomat, right? Because he got the North involved, he got the twins. So, how many people are going to get this Harrenhal, right? Is this just like, oh, you get a castle, you get a castle, you get a castle? Yeah.
Hey, Ulf, we got a castle for you.
Yeah, exactly. Ulf wants a castle. Yeah. So I love this. We talked about last season that, there was a lot of humor with the old man dealing with Daemon, right? And just with Daemon having the mysteries and him going, the peas, and talking about it. So I'm sad to see him gone. Also because he wasn't on our list of people that were going to survive or not. It's like, dang it. I was checking to see if anyone had him losing his life. Great scenes. I'm really glad you brought up the flip side. And I do wonder, how this is going to play out the rest of the season.
So which one's dumb and which one's dumber?
The world may never know.
I want to add one more thing because, Aemon gets stabbed from behind, and some of that was, how experienced a fighter is he? I know he practiced a lot, but was he wearing his armor? Because this is like the first time you've seen him fight in armor. And he also is afraid when he hasn't been afraid in the past was, the Helena comment to Allison in last episode. So he's still, young and out of his element a little bit. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens because Daemon did have Sir Simon to be like waking him up out of his, sleeping at the table or crawling up to the door type stuff. Who's going to do that for Aemon? He's completely in her power, I think. So he might be dumber.
I mean, does the castle have anybody left?
I think he killed everybody, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's there. Plus, Aemon does have a thing for older women, as we know.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that. Ouch. Hey, if no one else is left alive in the castle, doesn't that mean she has it now? Possession is 9/10 of the law,
Squatters' rights.
True that. Absolutely. Okay, Shannon, what's your highlight?
So I'm going to pick the beginning of the scene Jesse started us with, when Daemon goes in to see Rhaenyra in bed, and as we talked about earlier, actually plays the role of supportive husband there. I mean, he's trying to spur her into action, but not in a callous way. You know, he brings up the Song of Ice and Fire about seeing a vision, you know, and talks about, don't you want vengeance? And it's not like, you know, get off your ass, you lazy bum, and let's go do something. It was actually quite supportive. I mean, as far as Daemon goes. And then from the scene when they march into the room and she kind of reads the advisors for filth, you know, when it's like, could it be a snare, my lady? You know, and she's like, I'm going to take that throne or die trying, you know, and then they just walk out. And the whole scene of them getting ready, walking, getting on the dragons, then you have Daemon talk to the dragon riders, and again, just kind of poke his finger in Ulf's head again for good reason, much deserved. And then tells them to fly cover, and then we'll come back to settle the question with Vhagar. And then when do you reference the dragon shots with Daemon and Rhaenyra kind of leading and the others flying cover outside? It was well done. You knew where everything was. And it was different shots than we had seen of dragons. And then it shows both of them landing at King's Landing. And then when they walk in and everybody kind of lays down their guards, and it's like, David says, well, the real test is what we find inside. And from that moment they enter, the way they choreograph that, it's almost like they're marching. Their footsteps are in lockstep. They're right beside each other as they come up, with only Daemon getting slightly out in front to kill Bill some people. And then they get in that big room, and he's like, you know, does anybody else want to challenge the queen here? And then when they're coming down that hall, you can see everything on Emma Darcy's face, the reddened eyes, the determination. But her sadness has turned into rage and determination and purpose now. And she doesn't have to say anything. You can just see it on her face and in her body and the ways that she carries herself. Just tremendous acting there. And all the little shots of them, they even hold hands at one point. They turn corners, and the score is fantastic. And then they go up, and it's almost like when a reverse of Aragorn throwing open the doors. You know, Daemon throws open the doors, and then there you see it, the throne. And that leads into the scene Jesse started us with. But I love the choreography of it, and without a lot of dialogue, how perfectly in sync Emma Darcy and Matt Smith were portraying those characters for the title of the episode, The Queen's Landing. Loved it.
Yeah, this was going to be my favorite. It was my favorite. The visuals of the dragons coming in, the arrival of Rhaenyra and where she even lands, I think was very similar to all the way back to season 1. But the dragon is much bigger now. And then when Caraxes is outside the main entrance to the Red Keep, and then looking over at everybody like, I'm just going to stay here and you're going to stay there. And then when you have the two of them going together, and Emma Darcy, I talked about it in one of the behind the scenes, that she and Matt Smith had talked about, you know, they are in lockstep with each other. And she's like, maybe it's because they're related, you know, it's genetically there, but the two of them were very much like they are marching together. And yes, her performance was fantastic because she did transform her grief into, you know, rage, nihilism, which Emma Darcy mentioned is really helpful when you're going into battle. To, you know, have that fatalism with you. So I loved all of that. And, the way that Matt Smith played all of the killing, I mentioned this in the last episode, you know, he's just ruthless about it, but very efficient, right? It's not pretty. He's not wasting time with technique necessarily. It's, you know, very, like I said, efficient. And, he also knows, he knows what needs to be done. And Rhaenyra knows what she wants to do, but he's the one who's actually enabling all of this to happen. With his, I'll call it coaching or queen whispering along the way. I loved everything about this. It was great.
Yeah, is seeing them together and working together is really nice because they've gone through so much, turmoil, and he's been such a jerk. So to see him kind of taking the right role as the prince consort or the however you want to call him, that he's there backing her up. I also was reminded a little bit of you'll hear athletes talk about they are not coming into our house, right? When they're doing no one comes to our house and disrespects us. And I love Daemon saying, anyone else that want? And you forget, that Rhaena grew up in that place. That is her home. I'm sure they spent time where they were before, but that was home. And so this feeling of coming home, and I love the idea, right? Like, I'm here to set things right. She mentioned that. So it is a wonderful setup to then we get the big ending where, she takes the throne. But yeah, I just loved everything about that dramatic, them together. Don't know how long they're going to stay together. I don't know how long Daemon can keep his ego in check, right? But for now, they're a true power couple that they've gone their first step. Now there's a lot left to do, but for now, right, they've done the first step. They've conquered King's Landing. She's sat on the throne, and now we go from where do we go next?
I was impressed with Daemon using the Song of Ice and Fire to motivate her. I wouldn't have thought of it, but it is good motivation. The bigger picture. This war is so much bigger than us, than what's happening here and now. This is the fate of the world. We have to do this to save it. Save the Dragon Mother. Save the world. Honestly, this whole thing makes me actually like Daemon. Like, he was always entertaining and a joy to watch, but he was a horrible person. Now he's getting kind of likable. And he was really there for Rhaenyra through all of this. For the first time, they feel like a married couple, and I think I'm there for it. But this created a little hint of things to come. Before they left, Mysaria hands Rhaenyra the crown and says she hopes she calls for her and to remember which one of them has been loyal. And then we see Daemon doing all of this. I think we're going to get this triangle between Daemon and Mysaria fighting for Rhaenyra's affection, attention, trust, really everything. And this is going to add to the strain Rhaenyra feels during her rule. So we're going to get that drama from this. And this whole sequence of Daemon being there, like the two of them just working so well together, it actually makes him a contender in that triangle, because who he was until like the last episode of last season, she was ready to give him up. Like, she take him or leave him, whatever. So this really puts him back in her good graces. And the way Daemon's mind works, I'm not sure if it's real, if it's, he's putting it on, or like if he believes it's real until, the tide changes and suddenly he feels differently again and he's back to chaotic old Daemon. Who knows? Like, the coin's still spinning. But this was just a beautiful sequence.
Yeah, a couple of things that made me think of it. You go back to last season when she says, "Don't leave me again." And he says, "I can't because I tried," right? that may have been a change. The other thing that we didn't talk about, or I don't think one of us mentioned, is he disobeyed me. And he goes, that's what sons do. Right? I thought that was very sweet and very sad at the same time, because we talked about last week about teenage children push the boundaries. And I just thought he isn't denying her grief. He's just, kind of bringing up that's what children do. And I just thought that was a very sweet moment. That their relationship so far, this episode was really something I thought really beautiful.
Yeah, so that's a great pivot, because that's actually, I think Emma Darcy gets her Emmy out of this episode, but I think Damon was the MVP of the episode, and of getting her on the throne. So I loved the scene with Fish Feed and him with the Rivermen. I immediately thought of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and when they were all singing in the tents at night and, celebrating with all those folk songs. And then Sir Simon comes and he's got wine, so that's great. But I've also got really terrible news. And Damon, immediately turns into the commander. He's like, I gotta go to King's Landing. You gotta stay here. We'll come and back you up. And then you're gonna have to, eventually we'll all meet in King's Landing. And, he doesn't even really spend the time to have a final toast with his men. He just drinks and goes, and he's quite grim. And then he has the discussion with Alice Rivers. But then once he gets to Dragonstone, it's scold out the dragon seeds. Why were you thinking? You only spent 2 days. You're not supposed to, you don't think. Because then later on, he even reminds them when they're leaving to go to King's Landing, he's like, there is no thinking required of you. The Queen doesn't require you to think. The scene I loved, and I loved how they shot it cinematically, was Damon walking through the hall to get to Missandei. What's her name? That's her name, right? Mysaria. Sorry. Mysaria, and she's the gatekeeper to get into the room, and they have this sort of back and forth about why are you doing this? And she's like, it isn't about you. And I think he does hear that ultimately, because when they both sit down together, that's when it's almost like when we used to have Littlefinger and Varys talk to each other, where it was like, do you think she really trusts Alicent? And, I think she does. And, what does this mean? And then when he goes into the room, I completely agree. He's there to support her. But he also recognizes, because he's been told, Aemon's gone. It's gone to the Vale. This is our window. Yeah, so he understands the battle plan, the strategy that they need to execute, and he's the right person to do it. I do think that, because then he tells her, remember the story of Ice and Fire? What if it's true? What would you do if it were really true? To me, he is convinced from his own experience in Harrenhal of this prophecy, and his role in it is to support her. I do believe that he's committed to that at this point. We'll see how long that happens once he gets bored hanging around King's Landing and doesn't want to listen to the small council or whatever. There's still a huge battle component, though, right? We still have Vhagar out there, so I think they can be a happy couple, or at least a supportive couple, a little bit longer. But my perception of him in this whole episode was that he was there to really support her. But the thing I loved about that, the way that they filmed him and Mysaria, was they're sort of dancing around each other, and then ultimately they sit down and they're sitting next to each other. But then when they actually leave and she gives Rhaenyra the crown, he kind of smirks, like, we're leaving you behind. And so, they have an uneasy truce, but it's definitely a triangle for sure, I think, coming. The other thing I loved was just Matt Damon's performance. There's
Matt Damon!
Oh, did I say Matt Damon? I did. Matt Smith's. He does so much with his posture. Sometimes he's extra bow-legged. Sometimes his forehead and his eyes are really showing the thinking that's going on, or the seriousness, the gravity of the situation. When he was just lit by the torch going into the black cells, and then he finally gets to the window and is laughing. I just loved how they framed all of that. And when he's protecting her in the throne room, when initially all the Kingsguard comes out, and he's like going to take everybody on, not blinking, kind of notices when she pulls out Jace's sword, and he's like, stay close. And then I just loved how when the City Watch comes in, and he's looking and looking, and he's like, well met. and there's like, yeah. So there was, and then when he's explaining to her, you're the one that's got to do this. They have to see you do this. And recognizing that, because earlier in that scene with the Kingsguard, when Rhaenyra does pull out the sword, he laughs. That's his response is, oh, you're going to fight? That was, so Daemon completely recognizes how to, coach her up so that, she can get through this. 'Cause she even admits to him, she's like, I don't know if I can do it. And he's like, this is what makes you queen, is doing this. So that was my highlight. I shouted out Daemon as my highlight. So I don't know if you want to comment on that further.
Like all together.
Daemon in the episode.
MVP Daemon.
MVP Daemon.
Yes. I love the freestyle celebration. It does seem like they were making up the lyrics as they went. And, that was very funny, and we got to see Lord Oscar Tully, right? And, the kid, and doing that. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, there is this moment where Daemon is showing that he can be a supportive. And yes, when he gets the message, right, that Jace is dead, and he's like, he does kind of give a, I'll see you in King's Landing, right? He kind of does this one last that says, I'll see you there. So he truly was, I agree with you, the MVP of the episode. And, if he can keep his ego in check, right? The man behind the throne is, whether he's the hand or not, is an incredibly important role for him to see. So yeah, I love that. And it was great to see, Matt Smith get to show that range.
I'm just happy to get a Matt Damon out of Wendy this season.
Probably not the last.
brings me so much joy. That song, I feel like it's a form song, like it's a structure that you can plug in whatever content you want to it, as long as you fit the rhyming scheme. Like, there once was a man from Nantucket. It just keep the rhymes and the tone, and it works. And apparently everybody knows it. It sounds like it's very much a Riverland song with the fish food, or fish feed. That's what it was. But you've got the men from the north know the song. Whoever that woman was with the black eye makeup.
Black Alley.
I hope. Aha. Are we gonna get more of her later?
We saw her. We saw her in season 2. I think she was in one shot. when they were crossing the bridge, she came with all the other Rivermen when they crossed. Is it called the Twins? The bridge that
the Twins. Yeah. Yeah. Interested in seeing more of her. She was joining in the song. And Damon was joining in the song. I didn't think he was that type of person, but there was. And despite all the emotional roller coaster on Rhaenyra's side, he was kind of steadfast through the whole of it. He was there at the celebration, and he still had that kind of energy in bed with her, talking to her. Like he wasn't like joyous and laughing, but he wasn't sad. He was kind of in a get stuff done mode. And it somehow worked for all the different scenes he was in. And I feel like he was in so much of this episode to make up for the fact that he was in so little of the last episode. He was not part of the big battle of the Gullet, which so much was happening. His battle was just like an afterthought in the last episode. But here he is, like, making up for it. And I do love the fight scenes, the way he held himself in the Red Keep, protecting Rhaenyra, taking out everybody, and being prepared to take out the Castle Guard and the City Watch all by himself while protecting Rhaenyra, who might hurt herself with that sword for all he knows. And he's like, I'm gonna do it. This is my job. I'm here for it. And he was just solid. He was solid for this whole episode. And I think the most interesting scene he was in was the one with Mysaria. And it shows that the character growth has kept, at least for a little while. He isn't just throwing his weight around and dismissing her. He gets into a little tiff with her, and then she does say that line, "Not everything is about you, Daemon." And it shifts. He's like, You're right. Let's sit down and talk about this. Let me figure out what's going on here. And like, wait, you want to talk about this? You talk with a woman, too, about another woman, and cool. That is a very interesting side of you. I didn't know it was there. I hope we see more of it. I hope he doesn't backslide. It's, I've been watching Cinema Therapy a lot, and one of the reviewers is an actual therapist, and he talks a lot about how we tend to fall back into our habits. You see the problems, you realize they need to be corrected, and you are ready to do the work to move forward. But there will be backsliding. You will fall back into old habits because they are habits. And I wonder if we're going to see that. We're going to see him slip back into old Daemon and have to be corrected like we saw with Mysaria. Like, not everything is about you. Okay, yeah, okay, you're right. I was going to say, I'm changing. I'm changing. So I wonder if we're going to get more moments like that, or if he's just going to be solid from here on out. I don't think that sounds very interesting. I think we're going to see more backsliding. But he was definitely, I think he got the most screen time in this episode. And you're right, MVP.
Christine, when you were talking about there was a man from Nantucket, was that about Allison's scene to go visit the Gold Cloaks?
I mean, maybe. It was a very interesting locker room moment.
So I did like your description when setting that up, that like, I think Emma Darcy was the acting MVP of the episode, but Daemon, the character, was the MVP of the episode. That's a good way to put that. That scene at the after the fish feed, just a quick book tangent. A lot of book fans were upset that we didn't see the fish feed. It's also called The Battle by the Lakeshore, and that's like really heroic actions by the Winter Wolves that kept driving into it. And the reason it's called the fish feed, because it was one of the bloodiest battles of all the Dance of the Dragons. And people, they kept pushing the Lannister army back into the water, and so many people died in the water. That's where it got the the nickname the fish feed. So, but after all we saw with the Battle of the Gullet, I love spectacle and it's great. And there were so many notable battles in the Dance of the Dragons. I don't think we can see every single one of them, even the ones that are very prominent to book readers. So if you're going to handle it, the appearance of the Winter Wolves tossing a Lannister head, chopping off a lion's head, then seeing those on spikes at the campground when they're all drinking and having fun and singing songs. I think that was a good way to handle it that made me feel less disappointed that we didn't actually see the fish feed. And you're right, Daemon in that moment seems like a commander. We talked last week about his growth when the river folks wanted their dead returned to the mud. And he kind of rolled his eyes, just thinking, well, Caraxes could take care of this in a second. But, and this continues that streak of him showing growth. And, we've talked about him in the scenes with Rhaenyra, the tender scenes and the badass scenes, slicing through the castle, the scenes with his men, and even the little dance he did with Mysaria. Like when they finally sat down on that bench and then reflected. Part of it was like, okay, I could view this as a challenge to me, and I probably will. And he asked, what game are you playing? Because he's been away and has probably surmised that, she and the queen probably got it on. She's a trusted advisor. So how deep are her talons into Rhaenyra, and how much does she have an influence? And I think that's why when he picked up when Mysaria handed her the crown and he walked by, there was a perfect Matt Smith smirk, right as they got it, because they're the ones going off to go to King's Landing. I think as an actor, Matt Smith was terrific this episode, and Daemon certainly was the character MVP. Just great choice.
Yeah, and he also did ask Alicent, so is she your number one now? Like, what's her job? And then she even says, don't be jealous or something. He's like, no, I'm just objectively noticing that, she seems to be your number two. Christine was talking earlier about, Daemon backsliding, or, he certainly wasn't at his best with his dragon seeds. And I think that will come back to bite him at some point. We talked about Alice Rivers, not getting Harrenhal. The other thing that happened in that conversation in the bedroom was when Rhaenyra said there was another dragon there that was what lured Jace to his death. Or, she implied that person, and he was immediately assuming, he's like, how do the Greens tame a wild dragon? And it's his job to go find that person. So to me, that's going to be really interesting when he finds out that his daughter, who he never had much interest in, it's like, are you going to serve the Queen's justice to your own daughter for, contributing to the death of the prince that was promised, to Jace. So that's definitely going to be something dicey he's going to have to deal with, I assume, in the future.
Yeah, and as I noted, this is a departure from the book because it was a completely different character riding Sheep Stealer that did not have anything to do with Jace's death. So I don't know what to expect, and that adds a juicy layer there, like you just said, Wendy. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with that.
See, I like that book reader attitude. They've changed this, so now I'm really curious. Now I don't know what's going to happen, and this is fun. That's what I want to see from a book reader.
So, any more highlights before we move on to maybe some lowlights?
I feel like Lord Corlys is going to get short shift this episode, and I know that was an important part, but my other highlight is we continue our fun road trip with Aegon and Lord Larys.
Yes,
that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just it was not very long, but you're in less pain. That's because I'm not talking to you, right? And this back and forth, and then, I am surprised and everything. So just it was a very short scene, but it was just really, really funny. And it was just the right amount of like comedy seasoning sprinkled in to this episode that had so much drama. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we at least give a little shout out to our fun, riff, fun Laurel and Hardy or whatever, this, I guess, Bob and Bing. So, yeah.
Yes, this was exactly what I was going to bring up. Laris and Aegon, the road to, checks notes, Rook's Rest. I actually looked up those movies because I haven't seen them. It's a series of 7 movies. Unfortunately, you have to either rent or buy most of them on Prime or Apple to see them. But one of them is available for streaming on Prime. I'm gonna check it out. But Laris continues to be dry and hilarious, and I just want to continue that. I mean, it was a very short scene, and I don't care. I want this every episode, even if it's just a couple of minutes. And honestly, I am impressed by Aegon. They get out of the wagon, and he goes for anything he can use as a weapon, grabbing like the tip of an arrow. And then he went to town on his captor. Pain be damned. And then he actually takes charge, declaring that they're going to Rook's Rest instead of Duskendale. It's a lot more proactive than we've seen from him up to this point. And I am interested to see how he grows this season, which is saying so much because I have hated this character from like day one. And he's become so much more interesting in this situation. That's why we need this every episode. I want more of that. Like, he's going to grow, and it's going to be because he's with Laris, and Laris is just hilarious.
Yeah, the comedy moments were great. Just bonking a guy on the head with a raven's cage, and then Aegon going to town with the arrow. I will point out one other thing too. He said he wants to go to Rook's Rest because he assumes that Cole is there, or that Cole left a
garrison.
There.
Yeah, he left a garrison.
Yeah, a garrison there. And also, that's the place where a supposedly dead dragon might be, too, lying at Rook's Rest.
Yep.
I'm going to get my Sunfire Truth or Crazy Theories out.
Okay, listen, like, my issue with the Sunfire thing is just that what we've been presented in the show and the way people are reacting to it, they are stating that Sunfire is alive as if it's a stated fact in the show. And they aren't getting that from the show. They're getting that from the books, and we've already seen that things can be changed from the books. So that is what's upsetting. It's the confidence in which people are stating this, that Sunfire is alive. We know this. They've said it. No, they've said the exact opposite. So that's right. Why it's bugging me.
And it's been declared by people who don't have direct knowledge of it. So everybody makes the assumptions, which is what, and I think the show intentionally wants us to believe that. So when he eventually does see Sunfire and Sunfire's not dead, that'll be a ooh for the audience kind of thing. So anyway, we beat that point to death. But yes, I love our comedy duo, and we need more of them.
Yeah, it also underscores how fluid Laris is with conditions on the ground, because he's like immediate. He's the one who bonks him on the head. He knows the first thing you do is get money, go find a gold bag for us so that we can pay for our trip to Duskendale, and then he also had the foresight to stash Otto in the black cells and know that the person to give him to was Daemon. Specifically. So it'll be interesting to find out what else he had, planned ahead for along the way, to yet to be found. So that's a great one. Okay. Any more highlights? Okay, Jesse, we're going to roll the dice again and talk about things that weren't maybe as pleasing for us.
We have to go to the Vale. I just do not feel that this actress who is playing Reyna is getting a lot to work with. The scene where she is, wide-eyed and looking afraid and scared, and I get that, but just I understand. I guess she's just panicking going back there, but you would have thought she might have just gone back home, but then she does feel like she has nowhere to go. I just didn't feel like that. Her storyline is irritating to me. I just don't enjoy it. Now, who is the lady in the veil?
Jane Aaron.
Yeah. Like, she was like, get away. You're gone. I want, nothing. And then she's still like, I would have pushed back when Reyna said, well, didn't you want a dragon? A trained dragon? Yes, but you've just got a wild ass dragon here that's going to hurt me more than it helps. And you've got me where, once the queen finds out that I'm even halfway helping someone who helped her son die, I am in trouble. So I found that whole scene just a little troublesome. And I don't know where they're going to go, but right now I'm not enjoying it.
Yeah. I like in the end it was kind of like, well, I can't stop you from being here, and don't come in the castle. Like, don't bother me. I'm like, this is not even Sanctuary. Honestly, she just got what she would have had without going to ask for anything. Like, she could have showed back up in the Vale. It's a big country, and just like hung out there. I thought she wanted a place to stay because, like, what are you gonna like rough it with? Do you know how to even start a fire? Like,
she has a dragon, I guess. She can put the sticks. And
okay,
yeah, I think she's got some help there.
Yeah, but like
the dragon will feed you, but no, I don't know how you're gonna sleep or anything. Yeah,
like sleep and stay. I won't say stay warm. Like shelter. You gonna just like sleep under the dragon, like the wing or something? Can you trust the dragon to do that? So yeah, she's good with just hanging out in the Vale with her dragon and like living off of whatever the dragon can provide for her. I hope she realizes that humans need vegetables too. You can't just keep eating meat. She's gonna get scurvy.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the actress. The actress is not given a lot to play. She has a certain wild-eyed look anyway, but she has to do that confused, woe is me, I don't know what I'm doing look on her face a lot, and it makes her appear, and then the actions the character takes makes her appear dumb when I don't know if that's necessarily the intention. As we talked about earlier, it'll be interesting to see what the repercussions of this whole scenario are with Daemon and when it gets back. Like, what did she think going back there and asking? That just doesn't seem that bright. I mean, I know she thinks she has nowhere else to go, but, and how did Jane Aaron know so quickly that the prince died? Did they send out ravens immediately just, to let supposed allies know that the prince is dead? That struck me as a little odd. And I mean, I could probably hand wave it and say, she sent one to, Sir Strong to to give to Daemon, because obviously that's important for a gazillion reasons. But like, would they take the time to send one to Jane Aaron in the Vale? Is it maybe because she thinks Reyna's still decamped there, hanging out in the Vale all happily. So maybe she thinks it was to let the family know when she already knew because she kind of caused it. But, so yeah, I don't know where they're going with it. The repercussions will be interesting to see, but I'm not liking the journey we're having with it thus far.
Yeah, I agree. She just keeps making mistakes, and I don't know if they're trying to turn her wild. She wasn't. She seemed a lot smarter earlier, and she's gotten, like, I guess, more wild, more clueless more unpredictable, I guess, the longer she's in the Vale. I didn't understand why she went back there, because the whole point was she took the dragon so that she could take it back to Dragonstone. And so I was assuming that she was going to go back to Dragonstone after the Battle of the Gullet, because regardless of whether anybody saw her as the person riding the dragon, you know, her whole point was to bring it to them as a you know, a resource. So, and she clearly needs to learn how to control this dragon, and the only place she's going to learn how to do that is to get with some people back on Dragonstone. So, I mean, I guess I'm assuming because after Aemond killed Lucerys, maybe she just concluded, once Rhaenyra finds out that I had anything to do with Jace, she's going to kill me. It didn't. Her fear was real. You know, she really screwed up. But why she went back to the Vale just really didn't make any sense to me. Everything that Jane Eyre said made total sense. She's like, first of all, where are them kids? You know, it's like, what have you done? It's like, that's the thing that's going to get you killed, is that, you know, these children are just missing now. You know,
there were other people with them.
But we have no idea what's going on with those kids. If those people could be trusted to actually get them to Pentos, we have no idea. So I don't understand how this is going to tie into the story. If she is going to try to do something heroic that again is going to go awry, and she's going to end up killing the wrong people, killing her sister or something. It's not a story that I'm interested in, I have to say. It feels like this weird sort of thing hanging out here as a distraction, maybe. I don't know. In the books, were the wild dragons prominent in the story? I mean, you talked about there was this other character named Nettles. You know, were they actually on one side or the other? Or were they a wild dragon that would just appear and cause havoc?
Yeah, there were 3 named dragons that were wild. There was the Cannibal, because it liked to attack and eat other dragons. There was Grey Ghost, named because of its coloring, and Sheep Stealer. And then the people on Dragonstone all knew who they were, and I think one of them one or both, or a couple, may have appeared in the book's version of the Red Sewing and went unclaimed and chewed up or burned people and whatever. But I mean, it's not a spoiler to say the other 2 were out there, but nobody ever tamed them, and they didn't figure prominently. So Sheep Stealer was the only one that kind of wove in and out of the story, but with another character. So,
but is the story similar?
In a way, yes. Okay. So, yeah, I won't say too much, but the character Nettles did ride Sheep Stealer and did wind up on the side of the Blacks, and that character had a whole arc, and then just kind of disappeared. So, but Sheep Stealer was eventually tamed, and part of the action at some point.
Okay. Other problems in this episode?
Lowlights?
Yeah. Lowlights?
Yes. The attempted rape. Now, I'm not going to say something like that wouldn't happen. I absolutely believe something like that would happen. I'm not sure what it adds to the story here. Alicent was already freaking out. She had to change plans, like improvise something on the fly, having to go around to as many fighting people as possible to try to get them to stand down when Rhaenyra showed up. And then her personal guard turns on her. He's not there to protect her. And then we get Lord Jasper, who we didn't really see that much of before this. Like, he looked familiar. I probably heard his name before, but he wasn't really a prominent character before this point. Suddenly he comes in and he's all like, yeah, I know what you did with Sir Kristen. And then you, down there, with the city guard, what were you doing down there? Like, there were a lot of appendages out when she was there, true. But, like, what are you getting at here? And, like, I'm not even clear if he thinks that she's doing something treasonous, or if she's just sleeping around and he wants in. And I'm like, you feel like that's going to lead to something later on, but he just gets beheaded. So, like, any information he might have had on her, gone. So, we got put through that uncomfortable scene. Allison got put through that. I'm not sure why it was included. So, what was this about? This is the reason the episode got a 9 instead of a 10 for me. So, like, I'm looking for value in this scene, aside from shock value.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, this comes through the filter of the history of the franchise using sexual violence. And sometimes you can defend it by saying, this is a despicable character, or this is what this evil person would do. Sometimes it was kind of pre and shock value, and they may or may not have needed to go there. Or it may have been depicted in George's books, and they wanted to replicate the scene of it. But here, I agree with you. I don't know what it added. So to me, I think the scene would have been more effective if he comes in there, he accuses her of treason, wants to know, and maybe he gets physical, like he grabs her arm, and I'm taking you to the gold cloaks for justice, or, I'm going to drag you down to the black cells until we get to the bottom of this, or something like that, that could have caused a ruckus, that Orwell could have interrupted, and we could have wound up in the same place with the guy in the black cells for Damon to later behead. I don't know what it added, and I don't know. Allison was already stressed enough, and we clearly understood her situation. I don't think that was a case of you needed it to up the stakes or anything like that. So in an episode that I otherwise loved, I thought that was a misstep too.
Well, I was confused about who is this guy? What's going on? I was already a little confused because she was talking to a lot of people that I didn't necessarily recognize along her way. Somewhat, I assumed he was there because they wanted to show that her plan was falling apart. People were figuring out that, or suspicious of her, and the way he talked about her was very much accusatory. He made some comment about, you're always sneaking around, and then the stuff with Kristen Cole. So he obviously had a grudge against her as well. The other part, I think it was there, was so that we could see where the Maester was going to land out in the episode, if he was going to turn out to be actually loyal or sympathetic to her, because when he comes in, it could have gone either way. He could have believed Sir Jasper, and they could have taken her at that point. But instead he's like, no, you can't accost the queen. I just know what I see in front of me, regardless of what she did. He wasn't giving her a pass that maybe she wasn't up to something. And then later at the end, I was like, oh, it was so that they could have somebody else to behead. So it really felt like they backed into giving us a reason to kill this guy. And, one of the best reasons is that he was, trying to assault her. So I, if they had cut that whole thing out, or he just came in and kind of was like creepy Laris, right? Where he tried to be like, hey, I know what's going on here, and you're going to owe me to shut up. That would have been equally effective, I think, at conveying that things are falling apart. Her situation is very precarious right now, and it might have raised the stakes a little bit on them trying to escape out of the Red Keep, maybe. So that's me speculating about why that was in the story. But I agree. I don't think, maybe they didn't want it to be too much like prior Game of Thrones, where people were trying to get out of the Red Keep in time before they got caught. But they certainly could have written it differently to show the peril that she was in and that Helena was in. I agree.
Yeah, I'm really glad you guys brought this up. Yeah, Shannon, you brought up that this is a pattern with this show, and I love the show, and I get the excuse, well, these are violent times, and this is what happened in the book, and these are horrible men, and I get all that, but I just don't. I think you need to be careful doing this, and if you're going to have this happen, make sure it's needed. Make sure it has something gone. I mean, I did find it funny that his last words about his wife, that he doesn't get to finish, even though he was just trying to, fool around, like he's this devoted husband. Nope. Yeah. So I'm glad you pointed it out. It wasn't needed to me. I understand that using this, you can tell it. You don't have to whitewash a story, but I think you have to be careful how you use these things, and not just use it just to make things look spicy or something. So good call out.
Well, I mean, to me,
and by the way, Wendy, he was a member of the small.
Yeah, no,
council.
He was the master of
law.
Master
of
law.
They said his title, his function.
Master of law. And you could have said, every member of his small council should be brought in front of me, right?
Yeah. One thing, I didn't think that it was filmed in a way that was gratuitous. It was purely violence towards her. It wasn't. It's sometimes Game of Thrones, like in the past when Dany was raped by Khal Drogo, and people were like, no, it was their wedding night. It was like, he just raped her on a rock. There's nothing, and it was sexualized. There was nothing sexualized about him assaulting her. But the other thing I thought at the time when I was watching it was like, girl, you should not have treated Sir Rickard the way you did, because he should have been with her in that room. If he had been with her in that room, he wouldn't have been able to even come in and try to assault her in the first place. So that was the other thing I thought was, she did not treat that person well, and it put her in peril. So what else? We've been talking a long time. Is there any more? Shout out to the music as well, I think, in this episode. We didn't mention that earlier, but especially the music when they were bringing Jace's body back and Bela was flying back with him.
Oh, and I did like Claire Kilner did a great job directing this. The shots of how the dragon riders all were walking in lockstep and had his body on. It was just a haunting and beautiful shot. Lots of great shots that they could have conveyed, like, here's how they got from A to B, that I thought had extra artistry involved in them that we didn't even need, but certainly appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to feel bad if we leave this out. I just want to give a wonderful call out to House Valerian, gathered on the beach. It resulted in basically he's finally, he didn't say it in a very confirmed way, but he said he was had his name to give. I'm like, so you're giving him your name? Psycho for Adam too? Is that both of them? Yeah. And Bela already treating Alan like he's an uncle. So we're getting the family back together.
And when Alan says that means more to me than all the gold, too. Yes. That was a nice touching little moment.
I
So,
was going to bring that up as well. Just kind of, I
Yeah.
don't think there's much to discuss. I do think it's too little, too late.
Maybe.
Kind of like, but it is a
Honestly,
nice
I
moment.
think I've predicted that Corlys is going to live long enough to see everyone he loves die. So I think he's like, oh, you have a family again, so they can die too.
That could be. He
I'm
does
so
seem,
rude.
Yeah, he does seem to be destined to lose everything. Okay, well, that was a jam-packed episode to discuss. Before we go, I want to thank everyone for listening, and we would love to hear from you, hear your thoughts on what we've talked about, what we didn't talk about, what might be coming next. And I want to thank our maesters, as always, Jesse, Christine, and Shannon. This was so much fun, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
See you at Rook's Rest.
We'd love to hear our listeners voice thoughts and send us feedback. Call us at 706-927-8478. Stop by our tuningintoscifitv.com blog to record a SpeakPipe message, or check the show notes and leave us comments. From the blog, you can also find links to forum discussions and subscribe to our RSS feed. Call into our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Skype account and leave us a message. Be social with us on our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Facebook page, or follow us at Tuning Into Sci-Fi on Twitter.
You've been listening to Small Council Matters from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, episode 129, recorded June 30th, 2026.